Find other great podcasts like this one at podmoth.network.
Testing. Testing. Please do not be alarmed. We are broadcasting on a lost signal. Please do not attempt to adjust the dial until after the broadcast has ended. Join us for Pulp Fiction radio plays on the Lost Signal podcast. Find the signal on all platforms.
Here's a tip for you. There's a podcast out there with fans waiting to be your next customer. They tune in every week, they trust the host, and that host wants to talk about brands like yours in their own words to their audience. The problem is, you just haven't been introduced yet. We're Acast, where that introduction happens. As the world's largest podcast marketplace, we let you browse shows, see who's listening, and book host-read sponsorships or run your own ads, all from one platform. Transparent pricing, real-time data, complete control. Start advertising on podcasts by visiting acast.com/advertise.
Hello and welcome to Rowan and Pine. We have a new setup today, so I'm hoping that you can't really tell from the audio right now because you're just hearing me talk. But the main difference in our new setup is I have a very special guest. She's posing. My guest is Heather. How shall we address thee, Heather? Are you Heather.Wildflower? Are you just Heather?
Yeah, just Heather's fine on the podcast. But yeah, my social handle is Heather.Wildflower, and that's how I got connected to the lovely Rowan and Pine duo.
Yay! Yes, so Heather, for anybody who isn't familiar with her content, she makes some beautiful fantasy, witchy, sacred sites, beautiful content, and is documenting her life as an American in Ireland, having moved, I would say moved home. You've moved home, right?
I would say as well.
Yeah.
I'm currently working on a project of trying to get to all of the 32 counties of Ireland, which has been a blast. And it's really remarkable how many different landscapes there are within this one little island.
It reminds me a little bit of, of course you remember when Lord of the Rings came out and we all realised New Zealand was actually all of these amazing different green landscapes, and it looked like it could look tropical in certain places. And, Ireland's very like that depending on where you go, it can look like a different planet,
For real. Yep.
Especially if you go somewhere like the Burren in County Clare. Have you been there?
Yeah, yes, I have. And it looks like, more sci-fi needs to be filmed out there for sure. It looks like the surface of the moon.
It does. So it's for anybody not familiar, it's a landscape with limestone. It's exposed limestone, right? All over the landscape. I remember learning about it in school and having such a hard time because I had seen limestone and I was like, how can you have doesn't it just look like concrete? And I remember having computer time in class. This is such a 90s child story. Having computer time in class and looking up pictures of the Burren so that I knew I could picture what my teacher was talking about. Which, I wasn't like the kids looking up dirty stuff.
You're just I want to understand the natural world. And look at you now.
Wholesome.
I think something about the rock erodes at different rates because you'll look down into these big cracks and the cracks are full of lichen and ferns and rare species of orchids and stuff even. And
oh my God.
There's no snakes in Ireland, but there's a legless lizard that lives out in the Burren. And I was pray tell, what is the difference?
That feels like Irish loopholes. The way we'll be well, we don't have this, but we do have this that's very similar. You're What exactly is the difference between a snake and a legless lizard? I'm going to have to get some like snake expert on to like explain that to me, or at least just
If I'm
Google it.
remembering correctly without Googling it, it's something to do with their eyelids and like how they blink that makes them a snake or a lizard. So I think
Okay.
there was some contention when it was like discovered out there. People were like, oh no, that's a snake. Our whole thing, our one thing is blown.
It's like, oh no, St. Patrick, he was a fraud.
And then they were like, no, don't worry, it blinks like a lizard. So we're grand.
I do like that. I like that quick save of like, no, it's not a snake. It's definitely anything but a snake because, you know, there's snakes in England. That's different. They have snakes. But
They have
yeah, we
snakes.
don't have anything.
This one little guy raised his case to St. Patrick. He was like,
Yeah.
no, look, I blink different. My eyelids go this way instead of this way. It's all good. Let me stay.
You are doing your 32 counties challenge. What number are you up to on your out of the 32?
I've been to 12. I have videos out about 9. So I'm in a bit of an
Nice.
editing backlog at the minute. But
Oh, same. So yeah, this being our June episode, I thought like something solstice-y, and then I thought like stone circles, and then I thought who better to speak to me about stone circles than Heather, because you do a lot of visiting and hanging out. Like if you just can't find Heather, just go to your local sacred site and she's probably going to be there in a big flowy dress.
yeah, you're dead right there.
Wearing like a flower crown or something.
I feel very seen.
Yes.
And I am really fortunate that the largest stone circle in Ireland is like a 15-minute drive from my house. So it is
Amazing.
very fair to say if you're looking for me and I'm not at home, I'm probably at its Grange Stone Circle out by Lochgur is the one I'd be
Yes.
most familiar with. And yeah, we have it in the notes. I'm gonna get to share a little bit about what it feels like to be there for solstice for all of you. So a perfect June episode
Yes.
indeed.
Oh, so exciting. I have not made it down there. But I should, like, maybe it'll be like a 2027 solstice sort of vibe that I could think about. Definitely. So let me get us started. We're going to be talking, the original idea was just stone circles, but then I typically rabbit holed and I went into different sort of monuments, and I was like, well, I can't really leave out that because then that doesn't make sense. So this is going to be I'm going to call it monuments and ley lines, because we were originally going to call it stone circles and ley lines. So we're going to get started. So even if our international listeners have never stood in a stone circle or wandered through a ring fort, they've definitely seen them somewhere. It might be that you've seen tourist photos of Stonehenge, or you watched Claire disappearing through a circle of standing stones in Outlander. Maybe you picture the Barrow Downs in the Lord of the Rings book, because it's not in the movie. I double checked. Or you associate them with the secret of Kells, showing fairy mounds and ancient enclosures as liminal spaces. And if you've ever watched Doctor Who or Hellboy, you've probably seen Ley Lines powering time portals. These ideas are everywhere in games too, like, so I'm told, because I did check with you in Zelda and Elden Ring. And we can start out with a little bit of primary school Irish history on monuments, because very cool thing about the Irish school curriculum is we do talk about all of this stuff, and we talk about Newgrange. And so we will cover megalithic, which are prehistoric sites, and then we're going to cover standing stones and circles, and then we're also going to mention ringforts and cashels, because they're always lumped in together with sacred sites or ancient Irish monuments. Okay, megalithic and prehistoric sites are classified into 4 main types. We have court cairns, we have passage tombs like Newgrange, we have portal tombs like Poulnabrone in Clare, and wedge tombs. And then for standing stones and circles, they're more like prehistoric stone alignments. They can also be rows, but we know them mostly as circles because everybody pictures Stonehenge, really. Let's be honest. And then for ringforts and cashels, those are the fairy forts that everybody hears us talking about. They're the ones that you usually see in gorgeous aerial photos of the Irish landscape. They're usually earthen, so they're covered over with grass, because the original wood that would have enclosed them has rotted away over time with the elements. But sometimes there are stones. They were usually originally farmsteads or the homes of chieftains, or, you know, essentially a village.
Yeah, and my understanding is ringforts and cashels are more what get called fairy forts.
100%.
nowadays. And there would be a lot of superstitions about not moving or disturbing them.
Yes.
And yeah, they always look really well in aerial photography because they're perfectly circular.
Yeah. It blows my mind how perfect some of them are. I'm just like, I assume that it was, you know, they were using it like measuring, like taking the time to measure it all out. But like the fact that like they had no way of seeing how perfect it was up that high, it's just crazy. It's crazy. And it's so cool that like humans have been doing that for so long, for thousands of years. Okay, so we'll start out with our megalithic sites. They are prehistoric in origin. They typically have an above-ground burial chamber and are built of large stone slabs called megaliths, hence the name. And they're originally covered with earth or other smaller stones. They were built during the Neolithic period and then into the Bronze Age. So that's about 4800 to 500 BCE, before Christian era, by Neolithic farming communities. The tradition of passage tomb building actually originated around Carrowmore in County Sligo on the west coast of Ireland sometime after 4000 BCE and developed as it moved eastward. So I have in brackets West Coast superiority because...
And I won't be correcting you there, living in Limerick. So
we always hear about Noth and Doth and Newgrange, and they're so cool, and the ancient East and all of that, but it started in the West, so we're going to claim that. Dublin gets everything. Leinster gets everything. So we're taking it back. It reached its cultural peak with the great monuments of the Boyne Valley, County Meath, nearly a millennium later, so 1,000 years later. They're sometimes called megalithic tombs, but that's a bit reductive. Human remains have been found there, but the complex ones are more like gathering spaces like our modern places of worship. So if you think of everything that goes on in a church or a mosque or a synagogue, you know, all of the weddings and celebrations and all of that sort of stuff, this is what these were for these people. They were gathering places and celebration places and mourning places. And yeah, humans are we just don't change, right?
Yeah, it's
after
one of
all
those
these years.
comforting things. But yeah, like you wouldn't call a modern church or mosque just a tomb, even if people happen to be buried in it or buried nearby. They've done math more advanced than I can comprehend about like the amount of people it would take to build, the amount of manpower and hours and size of community that it would take to build some of these megalithic structures is, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people. But then there'll often be like around 20, the remains of around like 20 to 50 people actually inside of it. So there's some question as to, is it the highest status people? Is it maybe like a priest class? Is it, you know, all kinds of interesting stuff goes on at the different monuments about, are any of the people related to each other? Are they similar ages? Or who is cremated versus buried whole? Like,
right. It's one of those things that like, I'm always so jealous when I say, like, one of the things with, like, say for something like Outlander, time travel is like the thought of going back to when they were built and seeing like how these people talked about it and viewed it and what they did there and, you know, and just seeing it like on a solstice day and, you know, what the vibe was, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, agree. And it's kind of one of the only ways you'd ever be able to know for sure would be to time travel back. Like all we have are theories and trying to put together kind of the pieces we've been left. But yeah, there's kind of infinite possibilities.
Definitely. So let's get the big one out of the way. Newgrange is our most famous megalithic site. It was built around 3200 BCE by farmers during the Neolithic period. This means it predates Stonehenge by approximately 1,000 years.
Up the Irish.
Every Irish person will tell you this. If they know it, they will tell you. It also predates the Great Pyramids of Giza by over 500 years, making it one of the world's oldest and most important prehistoric sites, which just makes me so damn proud. Wow. It's a huge circular mound measuring approximately 85 meters or 279 feet in diameter and 13 meters or 43 feet tall. And it covers an area of about 1 acre. It has a stone-built passage, which is 19 meters in length and leads to an inner chamber with 3 recesses, which I remember when we were learning about this in school. We learned about it again in my secondary school art class. And this just like occurred to me when I was doing the research for this. So my art teacher she was also the religion teacher in the class or in the school, right? Because, rural Ireland. And she used to always refer to it as having a cruciform shape, or it was shaped like a cross. And looking back at this, I'm like, Christianity has nothing to do with this.
Jesus wasn't even a twinkle in his daddy's eye.
Exactly. Like, why are you shoehorning that into it? Yeah, so you'll see later they refer to it as a sun dagger, so like the dagger shape, and like I think that's a lot more like relevant to the time, right?
Yeah,
they would have been more familiar with daggers than crosses. So yeah, damn you, Miss McCallig, why are you shoehorning that in? I'm calling you out in my podcast. The passage and the chamber are precisely aligned with the rising sun on mornings around the winter solstice, a feature that has made Newgrange famous worldwide. More on that later. The mound is encircled by 97 large curbstones, most of which are decorated with prehistoric carvings, the most striking being the entrance stone known as Curbstone 1. I actually wanted to look this up because I was like, I feel like people would have been living around Newgrange and then might have been chatting about it and didn't really know what it was, after with each generation, like the knowledge would have been lost. And I was like, did somebody just decide to go in and start excavating it, or what was it? So what happened was Newgrange had remained closed since shortly after its construction, sometime between 3320 and 2910 BCE, which is that's a big time period.
Yeah,
a couple of centuries there,
yeah. And by closed, I think you mean like they filled the way you would get in. They filled in the little door with rock and dirt, is my understanding. So whoever was using it, it's not like they put caution tape around the outside or whatever. They filled in the entrance way.
Yeah, or like a padlock on it. Like, it's not really that. No, we're not talking about that. The winter solstice sun dagger was first seen again by human eyes in 1967. Like, imagine that was like basically dormant for so long. The local folklore still referred to the phenomenon directly before the excavation, meaning that Newgrange and its folklore has an oral tradition spanning approximately 4,000 years. Newgrange and its neighbouring sites, Noth and Doth, form the major part of the Boyne Valley complex and attract well over 200,000 visitors annually. Like 4,000 years of people talking about this will happen on the solstice. And first of all, I don't know how anybody didn't like break in and go look. Like maybe they did, maybe it just wasn't.
Yeah, I think
really
part of that is probably due to the superstition. Like this kind of mound is known to be like a fairy mound or a liminal place or dangerous in Ireland for sure. I think that's why a lot of these megaliths are so well preserved, is there's such a strong your granny telling you off if you go near one kind of tradition. One of the other oral folklore pieces that survived about them that I love is the people actually knew where the stones came from. When he was excavating, they told him those really big curbstones around the outside that are so elegantly carved were from the Mourne Mountains. And he was like, well, that can't possibly be right. How would they know? And when geologists finally got in there and actually the technology was there to test them, that people knew, and they were correct. It's from the Mourne Mountains.
Just for context, the Mourne Mountains are in Northern Ireland, and then Newgrange is like closer to Dublin. So you're talking like in a car nowadays, it would be about 2.5 hours drive away. So like imagine transporting those stones, these giant stones, all the way down there. Like the mind boggles.
It's unreal. And I assume whoever was recording that folklore was like, that couldn't possibly be true. Yeah, there's stories about the king that supposedly constructed them and the different deities that are supposed to have lived inside. Including a very practical element of where did we get these rocks from that survived 4,000 years of retelling.
That's crazy, and that it was passed down, because I remember. And we'll talk about it a little bit later. Was it like maybe two years ago that like they were testing Stonehenge to find out where they got those from, and the idea that they brought them from Scotland, and people were like, no way. But like, I
think it's Ireland, isn't it? Don't they say that Merlin brought them from Ireland in one of the stories, at least?
That is one of the stories. But I think when they tested them, it was Scottish stone that they were finding. Like, amazing.
That's still
like,
very far.
That's crazy. Like all the way down to Salisbury from Scotland. Like, what the hell? Like, I think a lot of times we do, and the exact same thing happens with the Great Pyramids, that like we sort of condescend a little bit and think, there's no way that people like that, like it had to have been this, that, or the other, or like the worst thing is the ancient aliens theory, which is so goddamn patronizing. But like, if these people were transporting and they had trade routes and they had relationships with people like miles and miles away, it just shows that they're a lot freaking smarter than we give them credit for, or that we think they are, just because they're not modern intelligent, quote unquote, like what we would class it, or educated as we would class them, you know.
To me and how my brain works, I'm very bad at math. Doing the math of like how to get the alignment of the hole in the ceiling so that the winter solstice light comes in at a particular angle would be harder than getting the big rocks there. Like, I can get my head around getting the big rocks there. I can't get my particular type of brain around, because it's not even that the light comes in the door. That part stays dark. It's that the light comes in a hole in the ceiling and illuminates the inside. But if you look back where you came in, that is still dark because it's sloped downward slightly. So it's a really spooky effect.
The fact that like if you were trying to get something like that in your house, you would have to have like a really accomplished architect to like come and like, you know, okay, so this is, and like on whatever, like would they even be considering the day of the year? They'd be considering the time of day for sure. And like the, you know, the sun will be here on this time of day and it'll light up this room, and you know, you'll get a lot of morning sunlight or evening sunlight or whatever it is. But the fact that they have this and it's aligned, and the other sites in Noth and Doth are aligned geographically, so that this event happens on solstice and that it will literally light up this chamber under the ground that has been there for thousands of years, that it's just
full of beautiful art. Like there's a megalithic carving of a fern inside that is so lifelike and beautiful. I should say it sounds like, and even I have been in there for the winter solstice, but that's actually a really coveted special event. So they mock up using a light bulb outside of the tomb what it looks like on any tour that you go through on any day of the year. You can see the sunrise on winter solstice effect. On any tour, regardless of the weather, which is nice also because Ireland. And then if you want to be inside it for winter solstice sunrise, there's actually a lottery system that like thousands of people enter I'm in there with those lottery tickets every year. Just so people from around the world can enter and be part of that. The alignment works, I think, 6 or 7 days of the year, so a little bit on either side of the exact winter solstice. Anyone listening who would like to shoot your shot, you can enter it online as well.
And they have, I can't remember, did they do a live stream last year? I remember when Emily and I first mentioned Newgrange on the pause, there was talk of like having a live stream for the solstice that year so you could watch it. But I think I remember going on maybe last year and I couldn't see it, but it was probably just me having a technology fart, whatever it was. But
I know they did it during COVID. They live streamed all the days because no one could be in there, which was actually beautiful. I still lived in the States at the time, and I remember my partner and I stayed up until like 3 a.m. or whatever it was at our time to watch it. But I wonder if I feel like they still live stream one of the days that it works instead of letting people in, which is a nice way that like anyone in the world could experience it.
Yeah. Especially if you like, you know, you just don't have the means to ever get there. I mean, like, that's crazy. I always say I'm going to enter the lottery. I kind of wish I did enter it like way back in the 90s, because I was like, maybe I would have had more chance if I just kept entering it, but just never got around to it. So yeah, I should have my name down there. The Boyne complex aren't just tombs though. Burial mounds are thought to represent a ritual space and, as we love here on Rowan and Pine, perhaps a liminal space where mortals who built them could interact with the spirits of their dead ancestors who might mediate for them with the gods. And we'll get into that a little bit more. That's the death fascination that we have really soon. But first of all, I have to introduce stone circles. So stone circles also were used for various purposes, both cultural and practical. They were burial and ceremonial sites. They were for religious practices and community gatherings. They were places of exchange and trade. And they had possible astronomical uses, which is, once again, absolutely mind-boggling to me. I still need an app to tell me what stars I'm looking at. So, for burial and ceremonial sites, early in the history of the monuments, stone circles were associated with the cult of the dead and mortuary practices. And you guys know me, if I see cult of the dead written anywhere, you know I am like, what is that? I was like, I have to like go down this rabbit hole. I could probably have spent way longer on this and looking into like the Celtic fascination with the dead, but I feel like that is a later in the year thing. Okay, so I have to rein myself in. You should all be very proud of me that I didn't shoehorn absolutely everything that I found into one episode. I'm getting a lot better at that.
Watch out. Episode on Cult of the Dead. Headed your way sometime in the future.
Just very quickly, in medieval Ireland, the dead played a more active role in society. For example, ancestral tombs called furta were used as boundary markers defining territories between different family groups or kingdoms. These ancestral burial mounds were very important to the community. One early Irish law tract outlined how a long dead and buried ancestor could be called upon to adjudicate in property disputes. So, like, if any of you guys are having, like, a will dispute in your family and somebody suggests having a seance, that is not completely outside the realms of possibility. According to old Irish law, anyway. Integral to the process was the role of the burial mound, which a claimant to the land must walk over successfully and in one piece. The implication made by the text is that the act was only safe for the claimant if, indeed, she or he was a descendant of the individual buried, as the buried man or woman would repel outsiders, but not their own descendants. I would like to know what happened to the fakers. Like, would they just like fall over dead? Like, what the hell?
Yeah,
but I love the idea of that.
Interesting. They are very steep little hills. I'm thinking of like the Mound of the Hostages at Tara is one that people may have seen or be more familiar with. I wonder if it's almost as simple as like, if you're doing this at night or whatever, do you trip? Do you fall? Like, you know, you don't have to die necessarily, but I don't think I've never walked over the top of one. It does kind of give me the like, oh, I wouldn't be doing that now. Like, it wouldn't be an easy thing to walk over at any time, but yeah. There's a spooky element as well, for sure.
Right. The spookiness, I feel like something like this you could only do it at like the witching hour. Like, it's in my mind, that's the only time this will work. You have to do it at like 3 a.m. with a bonfire just off to the side, and like somebody has to like try and walk over and a crowd gathered around. Like, just imagine, you can like imagine it in your head, like the scene being set. Definitely. So yeah, if you guys are arguing with any selfish relatives who say that you aren't entitled to something in a will, maybe try that. But maybe also don't walk over somebody's grave. I don't know. I'm not your mum. As burial and ceremonial sites, they were repeatedly used for rituals and as places where people congregated to participate in ceremonial burial rites, mainly cremations within the stone circles. Otherwise, they would have gotten very full very quickly.
Yeah,
because they tend to be a bit smaller.
In terms of people congregating for ritual use, the one out at Lochgar has almost a stadium seating effect where the inner part of the stone circle is dug down. And that is intentional, and it's not just erosion like it was done at the time of construction. The inside of the circle is down and the outside of the circle is built up. So the idea is there is an observational element, like whatever ritual is happening in the middle. You wanted space for a lot of people. You could fit a good few hundred people out there around it's the biggest one in Ireland, so around the exterior of the circle. But that one, interestingly, as far as has been discovered so far, doesn't have any cremated remains.
Oh, interesting.
Or remains of anybody, cremated or otherwise, I guess I should say. There is a wedge tomb that's like just up the road, so it's possible like the wake is at the stone circle and then the burial's at the wedge tomb. I don't know.
You know, after an Irish funeral, it's like, you going to the graveyard? No, it's fucking raining. I'm not going to going to the graveyard. But sure, I'll just shake their hand outside the chapel here, and then that'll be me. You have to go back to work. So we just haven't changed. I'm just going to keep saying that. The most famous stone circle of all is Stonehenge on Salisbury Plain in Wiltshire, England. It was built in several phases between 3000 and 1520 BCE during the shift from the Neolithic to the Bronze Age. Stonehenge is unusual because its massive sarsen stones were shaped and set in post and lintel formations. So that is, for anybody not like does not see my hands, it's 2 posts vertically and then something horizontal. You know, you can picture Stonehenge.
Yeah, it looks like a door frame.
Yes, exactly. Not all of the horizontal stones are left in Stonehenge, from what I remember. There's some of them that are just the vertical ones are left, but I think they were all originally horizontal, I believe. Stonehenge is unusual because its massive sarsen stones were shaped and set in post and lintel formations, and because its smaller blue stones were brought from South Wales over 100 miles away. No single purpose has ever been confirmed, but the site was almost certainly ceremonial. It may have served as a religious centre, a place connected with ancestors, a healing site, or a way of tracking the movements of the sun and the moon for the farming calendar. The monument is aligned with the midsummer sunrise and the midwinter sunset, marked by the line running through the entrance and the healed stone. Once again, how did they have this? Did somebody just stand there and be like, right, it's going to take us forever to build this thing, but these 2 spots have to be definitely kept free so that the sunrise and sunset can line up? Like, what? Just crazy.
Yeah. I think before living indoors and having all of these light sources and stuff, people must have just been so much more connected. And like the average person must have cared so much more about where the sun is and where the moon is and what it means.
Yeah. And I mean, we're also from where we are on the planet, we're so fortunate, because I do love the long Irish summer days. You know, there's sometimes you can be driving home from somewhere at 11 o'clock at night and it still looks like nice and bright and you can see everything and you can see the stars out, but you can still see so much. And I was speaking to, because I work with people from Rwanda, and they were saying that their sun sets at the same time every night throughout the year. And I was just like, I think I would find that so boring, or like it would just be so like, I just love that there's a change. And like Irish people, we love talking about the grand stretch in the evenings. Heather, I'm sure you know that if you can officially call yourself a citizen here once you start telling people about the grand stretch.
Definitely.
Yes. So the grand stretch is just when usually after the clocks change, after they go forward in spring, and you have an extra hour of your sunlight, and you notice the grand stretch in the evenings. Great stretch. And it's good. It's usually good for the farmers because they get more time out to do their silage and their baling and all of that. But yeah, it's just so endemic within our culture that we're so fascinated by the sun and how much sunlight we get, because we get so little of it in the winter that we're like a different country in the summertime.
Truly. We've had really nice weather here in Limerick the past week, and it's just such a difference. People stop and like talk to each other in the street, and everyone's not just like hurrying with their hood up, you know. A different country in the summer in nice weather for sure.
Yeah. So Stonehenge sits within a wider ritual landscape of more than 350 monuments, including the related complex at Avebury. Today, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site and still draws huge crowds for the summer solstice, including modern Druid groups who gather to greet the sunrise. That sounds like a good time. Sounds like that would be like absolute immaculate vibes, meeting the sunrise at Stonehenge.
I also think it's one of the only times of year, if I'm remembering correctly, that you can get into the actual stone circle. Like usually because they get so much tourism, you have to view it from a distance. But I think on the solstices, now I don't know if you need to apply or there's a lottery or whatnot, but it's one of the only times you can get closer. Do you remember that viral video? There was a cat in there.
Yes.
The winter solstice this year.
Yes.
Do yourselves a favor and look up that video if you haven't seen it, because it's really something.
Yeah, because that cat is just, and of course it's normal cat energy, but like, you know, cats always just look like they're so important anyway. It's like they're the most important being in the entire stone circle. And you do get that vibe. That cat is reincarnated from somebody. Definitely.
It's like, yes, bow down.
Yeah, I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be right now. Yeah, because I even remember like older photos before it became this, you know, the World Heritage Site, and before it became this huge tourist attraction. There was like farm animals grazing around Stonehenge. Like it was just such a just a part of the landscape that it's sad in ways that like they have to fence it off, but I 100% understand why, you know, it would just be trampled. You know?
Yeah, there's definitely a wider discussion there about like preservation versus letting people experience it that I'm sure like parts of Ireland are going through as well. Like the more famous that Newgrange gets, like are they going to keep letting everyone go inside every day of the year? But then some of these things are still, the one I go to all the time by Lochgar does have cows grazing.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's very... Yeah. Someone owns it and it's only by the grace of the farmer and kind of keeping right relationship there that people can access it at all.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And showing them the respect that they're due. Yeah. You hope everybody respects it as much as like you or I would when we went there. I know it's not always going to be that way, but yeah, be cool, people. When you're visiting these places,
people. Maybe a good place to note that it's not really appropriate to light candles on the stones. I've seen that. It's not appropriate to leave jewelry or offerings. I know you're thinking offering and it's coming from a good place, but some of the things left around that could hurt the livestock of the farmer who the land belongs to. Being mindful. Being mindful.
Great
like
point.
Offerings can be something like singing a song, playing a tune on some kind of instrument. I would say like leave a little bit of moon water, a little bit of oats and honey is a big one in Ireland, I know, for leaving oats and honey for the sheep, but then practically maybe a bird or a fox will eat that and it wouldn't hurt a cow if a cow happened to eat it, kind of thing. So with this kind of spiritual tourism, we have to think, don't leave glass. I've seen broken glass and I'm like, I don't know what that was meant to be. I'm sure it was an offering of some kind, but like it will outlast you. It's not biodegradable.
Yeah. Oh my God. And a lot of these things, like you feel like it's, you know, it goes without saying, but I guess people, you know, I understand people are so excited to get to these places, and especially if they live abroad or they live like it's a once in a lifetime chance for them to get there. Like I totally understand your excitement, but at the same time, yeah, like Heather said, be cool. Just be cool, please. Just another honourable mention to another famous stone circle, Clavacairns in Inverness, Scotland. They're a group of 3 Bronze Age cairns, one of which is known to most as the famous Craignadoon stone circle from Outlander. They are about 4,000 years old and were built to house the dead. The cemetery remained a sacred place in the landscape for millennia and provides many clues to the beliefs of Bronze Age society. Yeah, it's just, those scenes in Outlander where Claire's passing through the stone circles are just iconic. Like even just artistically, it just makes the stone circles look so magical and beautiful and mystical. And yeah, I mean, they're a vessel for time travel in the book and in the show. So of course people are going to be excited to visit them.
I love that. And I think there is something to the idea that they were marking something important. We don't know what it was. Like, is this a place that people fall through the veil? That certainly a lot of stories would say so. Whether you fall through the veil to another place or another time. We don't have enough people coming back to let us know.
Yes, exactly. Will you have a gorgeous Scottish man waiting for you on the other side? We cannot guarantee that. Nobody can. There's plenty of gorgeous Scottish men on this side. So,
but yeah, they're marking something. It's a lot of effort to put in, and the idea of kind of why are they where they are. So it's questions a lot of people have tried to answer.
Especially because, and we'll get into the symbolism and things like that, especially because these things are like, they pop up within different communities. I wonder, is there ever a sense of, well, that community that's like 3 villages over, they have a stone circle. Maybe we should have our own and maybe ours should be bigger. I'm sure there's an element of like sort of keeping up, or, you know, somebody visits one elsewhere and they're like, yeah, I feel so spiritually connected to that place. And this is somewhere I feel spiritually connected to in my community. So I would like to mark this place as well. You know, I would love to know how that came about, how the decisions are made, you know, to build these places and to choose the locations and start building, you know?
Yeah. And as you were saying earlier, there's some evidence that it goes west to east. especially the passage tombs. Like, I've been to the ones in Sligo, and they're definitely a little bit rougher or less refined than Newgrange. So as people are kind of migrating, they're improving their building techniques and things, and I think you can see it in stone circles too. Like, if you compare Lochgur to Stonehenge, like, Lochgur doesn't have any of the top stones,
right?
It's very big across, but the stones are not quite as large as the ones at Stonehenge. So the idea that people are learning and the idea is spreading, but then why do they choose to put them where they choose to put them?
Yeah,
we don't know.
But we'll have some theories later on in our final part of this episode.
Stay tuned.
Yes, the circular design of stone circles had function as a gathering place, but the fact that this design was repeated over such a large geographical area reflects a sense of spirituality and belief in the otherworld, capital O, otherworld. They were sacred sites, and many may have been the focus for ancestral veneration, housing the remains of individuals who are important to the collective memory of the community. Stone circles close to trackways may have been centres for the acquisition and distribution of stone axes and their transfer to rich settlement areas. The connection between regions of early stone circles and stone axe factories and their distribution is well documented in the UK. Axes from County Antrim in North East Ireland have been found in Scotland and County Limerick. I feel like
represent.
Yeah, and project managing alone, like, you know, they didn't have Slack or Microsoft Teams or anything like that. They could build these things. They could advertise them. It's like, where did you get that axe? It's really good. Yeah, I got it from this guy at this stone circle, and you have to go there on the first Friday of the month or whatever it is. You know, just crazy.
The side quests.
Yeah.
You just gave me a idea of the Slack chat between some people of like, oh, so and so's really slacking off today. Like, he didn't move nearly as many stones.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely where the expression "if there was work in the bed, he'd sleep on the floor" came from. Like, it's definitely like he's not pulling his weight. Some stone circles were built on land previously used for agriculture. With its decline, the land was chosen as a site for funerary activities involving the building of stone circles and alignments. It's believed that the appearance of stone circles and related monuments in southwest Ireland by 1500 BCE marked a distinct arrival of a new people or new ritual practices. So yeah, you see it like changing, and as Heather was talking about how the engineering evolves, you also see, like, as we're moving away from, maybe, who knows, they could have been thought to be more temporary than they are, but they're like, they want these things to be built to last. And new people brings new knowledge and probably new building practices, or possibly new celebration practices. So yeah, that's how it all comes together in this big rich history.
Yeah. The idea of the symbolism too, it kind of pinged for me of building stone circles, and then also the passage tombs are round, but people were living in round structures as well. The Ringforts and Cashels are homes or animal enclosures that have been abandoned since, that are also round. So there's a culture that comes in that really wants to live in and worship in circular spaces. I don't know. Is there something there?
Yeah. Yeah, good point.
It seems nice. It seems cozy.
It does, and it probably feels more defensible, I would say, as well. Like, if you were expecting unwanted visitors, it might be easier rather than anything that's at like right angles. Who knows? But yeah, I definitely think it's definitely a running theme through their structures that they were building. Yeah. And because they have been part of the landscape for so long, of course, we have rubs hands together, the folklore around stone circles.
Hi everyone, Emily here.
And Neve over here. We're just popping in right before the ads to let you know that a rating, review or recommendation is like a magic growth potion for your favourite podcast. As an indie podcast, we really do rely on word of mouth and people recommending us to each other to get on the right algorithms and right feeds. So if you're following us on social media, please take the time to throw us a little tag, show us what you're doing while you listen. We're nosy, we love that. Or if you don't want anything to do with that whole mess, just a rating or a review will do. The links to all of our socials are in the link tree, which is in the episode description. That includes our Patreon, which is where we upload everything early and ad-free, including some fun extras for paid tier members.
Go check it out, and fuck yeah, folklore.
Here's a tip for you. There's a podcast out there with fans waiting to be your next customer. They tune in every week, they trust the host, and that host wants to talk about brands like yours in their own words to their audience. The problem is, you just haven't been introduced yet. We're Acast, where that introduction happens. As the world's largest podcast marketplace, we let you browse shows, see who's listening, and book host-read sponsorships or run your own ads, all from one platform. Transparent pricing, real-time data, complete control. Start advertising on podcasts by visiting acast.com/advertise.
So we have the Carnac alignments in France. So these are, it's not a circle, but it's like a straight formations parallel to each other of megaliths. Supposedly Saint Corneli, I hope I'm saying that right, patron saint of cattle, was pursued by a legion of Roman soldiers, and finding no other means of escape, had hidden in the ear of an ox and turned the legionnaires to stone. So that's why they're in straight lines, because they were marching in legion formation. Other stories say Merlin keeps showing up at the scene of the crime. Merlin turned Roman soldiers who marched through here into these stones, or that they were burial sites or an ancient earthquake detector. I would like to know more about that. I would like to know how it's detecting an earthquake. Well, also, like, how many earthquakes were you having?
I was going to say, because I wouldn't be familiar with France, but I know Ireland and England are not very prone to them.
No. Yeah, like Europe in general, we're not really an earthquake-prone place. So whatever tectonic plate that we're sitting on seems to be pretty stable. I guess, yeah, maybe there was some more in France. Yeah, exactly. My God, don't want to tempt that fate. So folklore around Stonehenge. Stonehenge has been accused of being a circle of frozen giants and stolen from Ireland. According to legend, the monument was once situated in County Kildare, which is southwest of Dublin. As explained by Geoffrey of Monmouth, Merlin the magician moved Stonehenge from Ireland to England to serve as a memorial for the hundreds of Britons treacherously slain by the Saxons during a truce meeting on Salisbury Plain. In the story, which Geoffrey claimed was based on an older work that he had found, Ambrosium Aurelianus, not like to meet him drunk because I could not say that name, who was the uncle of King Arthur, wanted to build a memorial for his dead warriors which would last forever, but his builders could think of no way of doing it. Merlin provided the solution: go to Ireland and bring back the ones there. Excuse me?
Even in the old stories, they're acknowledging, like, nicking interesting stuff from Ireland.
Yeah. What in the British Museum? Like, excuse you. Just like, imagine seeing somebody's lovely house going, I don't really know how to build that, so I'm just going to steal their house.
And an incredible show of power from Merlin, like the idea of teleporting this huge stones there
yeah,
across the ocean, like, really interesting. Also, Kildare is a really interesting town. That's Brigid territory, big time. The goddess saint. I believe you guys have an episode on her, but
we haven't done like a dedicated one yet. But I have a friend from Kildare that I might rope into to doing a Brigid episode. Yeah, I would love to do a full one, because we did touch on her in our midwifery episode, I think.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. So yeah, like the idea, and also Merlin, if you were able to do that with stones, could you not have done it like for better things? Like, could you not be bringing people grain? You know, starving people,
or build it yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It's just at least give them a finder's fee for finding all the stones. God, the Brits are at it again, always. So we have Long Meg and her daughters in Cumbria. also England. Tradition around Long Meg and her daughters in Cumbria claims that you can't reach the same number twice when counting them, and a fierce storm would rise up if anyone tried to uproot them. Local legends claim that the stones were witches turned to stone for punishment for doing magic on a Sunday, or that they were Meg's sisters punished for, quote, soliciting her to an unlawful love by an enchantment. So they were very anti-love potions, partly.
I love that you can do magic on every other day of the week, though, just not Sunday.
Yeah. This feels like my art/religion teacher shoehorning Christianity in there again. Because it's like, oh, it's not the Sabbath, the Christian Sabbath. According to legend, Meg, the stone Meg, stands above buried treasure. And the stone apparently bleeds if you chip pieces off. Now, I love that last part because it's stopping people from interfering with it and taking parts. I think we should spread that around all of the stone circles, that they will bleed if you chip pieces off them.
For sure. Well, and around Ireland, it'd just be you'd be cursed and your whole family would be cursed if you move one or take anything or...
Exactly.
But yeah, bleeding is a new one, but I love that. It's similar to there's a stone circle in County Wicklow called the Piper Stone Circle, where it's the same thing, I believe, where a piper was playing music for people on a Sunday and then got turned to stone by God, I guess. And see, there's one that's the piper and one that are meant to be the people that were dancing. It's a beautiful one out in County Wicklow, I believe.
Gorgeous. Yeah. And then we have Grange Stone Circle, which Heather had brought up at Lochgar.
Never shut up about it.
And why would you? The quote I have copied into my notes is, in the past, no minstrel, piper or poet would willingly spend a night within a mile of Lochgar's shore. Such was its fearful reputation and potency. Even to fall asleep in daytime on its banks was considered among them to be reckless folly. The sense of danger arose from the belief that the original poets of Lochgar were either descended from or were demigods, like Garroge Irla, able to draw human poets out of their depths. That, like, I love the poetry thing.
Spooky. I had not heard this one, actually, and I think...
Had you not?
No, I definitely know some poets and musicians who have stayed the night, like, kind of before summer solstice morning, because the sun comes up at, like, 5. Lots of people stay with permission of the farmer in the field nearby to be there for summer solstice. So now I'm like, oh, lads, wait, should we not be doing this? Oops.
Yeah, don't do it if you have a deadline or something, if you're trying to get a book done. You know?
Yeah. Some kind of inspiration. Yeah, obviously that's one of the stories running around about it, and it's a place that has a lot of stories. It's associated with the goddess Anya, is also meant to rise out of that lake or live under that lake in like a perfect reflection of Limerick underneath of it, which is really beautiful.
Gorgeous
imagery. She's a great example of how Ireland's immortals got de-deified to coexist with the church. So she starts out in some of the oldest stories as the goddess Anya, and then she gets demoted to the fairy queen Anya, gets demoted further to a banshee who cries in warning for the particular family who has their castle on this lake. And then even down into like the National Folklore Collection in the 1920s, she is just a human. There's a hill called Knock Anya, and they're like, oh, a human woman called Anya got taken into that hill by the fairy. So there's this like kind of straight line down of how much power or importance she's allowed to hold in conjunction with the rise of Christianity.
That's like infuriating, but also like does not surprise me whatsoever. The de-deification of Anya, as like, you know, we mentioned Bridget, same thing happened with Bridget, and I've definitely heard the Anya Banshee connection before. I think we might have mentioned it in our Banshee episode, because my thought is always like a banshee called Anya is just so funny to me, because Anya is like a millennial Irish woman name.
Yeah,
like I went to school with so many Anyas. Yeah. So it's like for anyone else who's like in a, you know, it would be like it being called Sarah, like a banshee called Sarah or whatever. Like it's just so funny. But like I didn't know that was specifically like the Lochgar connection. That's really good, and it makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense.
Yes, there's a family, I don't remember their name off the top of my head, but they have a castle on the lake and she's meant to cry for their, I think it's the Fitzgeralds, because
Okay.
the F in JFK, his side of the family is also like from this little town, and they're very proud of it. You can't get a pint in that town without hearing about JFK.
Jesus.
It all comes together. Banshees, JFK, stone circles.
Yeah, it's like a bingo. If you had an Irish bingo card, like you're filling out a line there.
You go to Bruff and the area around Locker to get it filled for sure. But the circle there is at least 4,225 years old. And there's actually two. There's a really big one that has the biggest diameter across of stone circles in Ireland. And then off to the field to the left, if you're in the parking area, there's a smaller one that is known as the Healing Circle, and that's the one that has the Clutie tree growing out of one of the stones. So don't miss that if you are ever going out to it. The smaller circle has a lovely, beautiful energy as well, and actually has entwined trees, a hawthorn and an ash tree growing out of one of the stones. So it's like a really interesting half and half. They kind of lose their leaves and bloom at different times. And that's the one that people tie their requests to healing to. I will again encourage using something biodegradable, even a strand of grass, rather than plastic ribbons or things like that. But really beautiful, nice, smaller stone circle as well. And then there's some local lore that there used to be a bigger third circle that encircled the other two. That comes to us from the National Folklore Collection in the early 1900s. But no evidence of that one either. The road was paved over it or it never existed in the first place. It's just a story. But interesting thought there that there might have been more. The other really beautiful thing about that one is there's a huge ash tree, like it would take 3 adults probably to get your arms around it, growing at the exact midpoint of the circle in the back. So like when you walk in the entrance, you're facing this huge ash tree dead on. But looking at that huge tree, it's so much younger than the circle.
Whoa, yeah.
So that's something I always think about when I'm standing there, of like, I look at this big old wise tree and then I'm like, oh, you're not even a tenth of as old as this circle is.
That's crazy. It's almost like a time marker, like just to, like, it's nearly like a flex of like this tree is so old. It's like, you always associate the oldest things on earth to be like trees and the mountains and stuff. But like, the fact that was a later addition, or it was a later, do you think
like
it was
just a little acorn fell between two particular stones at some point?
I was going to ask, do you think it was intentional, or do you think it was like it's a magical place, so I feel like it might have been just a by chance. This little
I don't
acorn.
know. It is exactly opposite the entrance. Like if the entrance is at 12 o'clock on a clock, this is at 6. So I wonder if it like got more light even or something on that one spot. But it is beautiful, and definitely one of the most iconic parts about it that people photograph and things at this point is this huge, huge ash tree, which you have to remember is just like a baby compared to the actual age of the circle. There are some carvings on the stones. If you kind of shine a flashlight or your phone flashlight at the back of them, there are spiral carvings that you can like just barely make out. It's one of the things we've lost to erosion.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine what they looked like way back when, or what may have been carved on them at the time.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like we're so like preoccupied with what we have retained and what has survived for so long. But like, and I feel this way about Ringforts as well. It's like, what was lost? Like, what was there originally? What did that look like? Like, they must have been just absolutely stunning,
Yeah. For
But
sure.
we're lucky to have them.
We are, yeah. Folklore practice that people still do at this stone circle is the idea of walking it clockwise and repeating a prayer or intention at every stone. So there's 113 stones. It's the undertaking of an afternoon for sure. I've seen people do it and talk to locals that's an important part of their practice with it. And then my thought, of course, was the first time I was out there, I was like, they didn't have clocks. Like, what's the idea of clockwise about? But when modern people invented clock, it's sunwise. Mm-hmm. Like the way the sun moves through the sky is the direction. And in Irish, it's daishal is the word for it, for going clockwise, and it just means sunwise. Nice. So this is potentially a very old tradition that has survived if you walk sunwise around the stone circle.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think, like clockwise would be to the right, and Ariash is Irish for on your right. So there's Ariash and Airclay, so daishal would be right hand, like sunwise, yeah.
Sunwise.
Yeah, so the language even...
Yeah, because I was just like, well, this must be a very modern thing because they didn't have clocks, but it turns out, no, when people were inventing clocks, they had it go the direction of the sun. It's just what we were used to maybe from sundials or what have you before, that we're all going sunways all the time and we don't even know.
It makes so much sense. It really does.
And that one is summer solstice aligned. So the entrance way that you would walk in, the area that's kind of left open so you can get into the stone circle, is still where the sun comes up on the summer solstice. And there are loads of people out there for it. It's a really beautiful experience. And something that struck me the first time I was there was obviously more like druidic people or witches out there, but there were also traditional Irish musicians. So it was kind of like a dance environment. Yeah. And there were people just kind of like the farmers that live on the road walking over with their coffee. And there were kids in their school uniforms. Their parents were taking them to school right after. Like, it was just such a mishmash of all humanity that were there to see it. And even though there were all these kids running around and playing, the moment that the sun came up through the stones and you could see it, it was silent. There was not a baby crying, not a child moving. Like, everyone was just absolutely still looking at it and looking at how that alignment still works.
That's crazy. And like, it sounds like just an echo back through like history, because like that probably just happens every year. You know, people just stop and take a minute and just pay attention and like are present in the moment. Because it's so hard to be present all the time. That's beautiful. That was such a gorgeous connection, you know, like a moment of connection.
Really, really powerful. And that there were so many different people, like different age ranges and different demographics of people that were there. But it obviously meant something to everyone and was, as you say, a very present, very grounded moment of, I mean, at the summer solstice, you're like, oh, it gets darker from here. Like, we have arrived at the peak of summer. I better savor it. I better enjoy it.
Yeah. That's gorgeous. It's such a special tradition, and it's such a special thing that like we still have people who are interested in it, who notice these things, who preserve these sites, that like they put the work in to like make sure that, you know, as we said, people don't treat them badly, or, you know, that they keep them in the condition that they are in, and like these national heritage sites. And it's just, I need to actually show some appreciation for that, because it's such a cool aspect of living here.
So even if you can't go on the day of the 21st or 22nd of June that it falls on, the alignment of most of these things works. Even I was saying about Newgrange, 6-ish days, you know, so if you need to wait for a weekend or for the bank holiday or something, like, it is still worth doing, because, and then like, especially the solstices, part of what's remarkable about them is the sun kind of stops in the sky for 3-ish days. It's in the same place. That's where we get the Irish word for solstice is Grianstad. Sunstop. Yeah. So that means the alignments work for longer. And sure, with our like Gregorian calendar, we can all be like, it's June 21st. And if I can't go on June 21st, it doesn't matter. But the sun literally stops in the sky. And then the alignment works for kind of a few days on either side of the stop as well. So don't hold yourself to, it's June 21st or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that brings us in really beautifully, thank you for the segue, to the astronomical orientation of these sites. So, solar or lunar alignments are features of many stone circles. Stone circles in the South Munster group have a general orientation between west and south. The respect for the sunset horizon in the darker months of the year is consistent with the funerary function of these monuments. The orientation was seemingly considered important by prehistoric societies. By marking the approach of the winter solstice and the returning sun, stone circles, properly aligned, may have acted as calendrical symbols in the farming cycle, for instance, as well as in the seasonal timing of ceremonies. Whether, however, stone circles functioned as astronomical observatories, as is often postulated, has been questioned. I never got an observatory vibe off it. I just always thought it was like a gathering thing. Like, I didn't think it was like the sun was your indicator of when to gather there, but it wasn't there specifically for the sun, you know? That was always just my vibe. So it's interesting that, like, in the research that I had pulled for this, that there is some like suggestion that people thought it was gathering to be an observatory or to like look at certain stars or whatever it was.
Yeah, I think they are. I can understand where people get that idea because they are kind of consistently spaced. So it's a nice way to think about where certain planets or stars are. So I went for the winter solstice to Grangestone Circle out of curiosity of it's aligned on the summer solstice, but where is the winter solstice sunrise anyway? And in my own naivety, I thought that it would be completely opposite. I was like, okay, so if the sun rises in the summer through the door, the sun will rise winter solstice behind the tree. It'll be like 180 degrees different. And it would if we lived on the equator, but we don't.
Oh, okay.
So it's actually more like if the thing was a clock, the summer solstice sunrise is like 11 a.m. And then the winter solstice sunrise is like 3:30.
Okay, yeah.
So it's not the complete opposite like I thought it was going to be. And it would be, I guess, if we were on the equator. But because we're so far north, it's like a smaller slice of the pie that the sun swings back and forth in between. And that's why we get our brutal winters and our really nice long summer days.
Yeah.
So it worked as an observatory for me, and I found it helpful of like, oh, because it's circular and evenly spaced, it kind of helped my brain understand the part of the sky that the sun moves through for us in this part of the world. That doesn't
really
necessarily
cool.
mean it's how the ancients were using it, but especially on that day, I was like, oh, I kind of get that of like, maybe if one of your druids is like astronomically challenged, you take them to this and you're like, look, observe this for a few days, see how it moves from one stone to the other. Like it's a study tool for...
Yeah, no, that's like, so, and it's such a good way of looking at it as well, as like this slice of, because it's like the place that we basically occupy in space, like the slice of the sky that we get,
right?
Which is such a nice and unique way of looking at it. And it shows that like why sometimes they're like the suggestion of moving these places or these monuments anywhere is just absolutely sacrilegious, which we will get to very shortly. So this astronomical alignment, it is really complicated to figure out at any site to discover where the sun or moon will rise or set at their northern or southern extremes. An inquirer must know three things. So the azimuth, which I definitely did not know off the top of my head, which is the azimuth is the direction of a celestial object from the observer, expressed as the angular distance from the north or south point of the horizon to the point at which a vertical circle passing through the object intersects the horizon. So Heather has said she is bad at maths. I am probably even worse. Geometry, no. So I will just take their word for that. It's just a very complicated angularly to figure out where these things will line up as somebody standing on the earth and in that particular point on the earth. And then, so you have the azimuth, and then you have to figure out the latitude and the horizon height. From these, the necessary solar and lunar declinations can be calculated. But you also have to allow for the declination of the sun and the moon compared to where they were when the circles were first in use. So when you think about like how different the sky must be after around 4 millennia, like, and the fact that they're still working, the way they're aligned.
Yeah, and they won't work forever.
Yes.
I think they're slightly off at this point, even because both Newgrange and the stone circle I was talking about are slightly off at this point, even just because 4,000 years is a really long time.
Exactly. It's like that, you know, that meme that you see is like, I'm so happy to be alive at the same time as Dolly Parton. We're so happy to be alive at the same time that these work. Everybody should be very grateful.
Yeah. You're darn right.
Archaeologists seem to take issue with the idea that the megaliths had a solar and lunar alignment. For example, they didn't believe that Newgrange was truly celestial aligned until a 1982 paper studied and confirmed it. So once again, like that patronizing, well, there's no way they could have known this, and this was probably accidental. They did. They obviously did.
Discounting the 4,000 years of folklore.
Yeah.
Like,
put some respect on their name.
I wonder if they had to be able to do these calculations. It sounds like they would have had to know that the world is round.
Right.
Also, like, you know how there was that whole time in history where they were like, it's flat, nobody say otherwise. Whoever built these monuments, if they are so precisely aligned, I would assume, not a math girl, they would have to to do that math you were describing, you would have to know that the Earth is round, potentially.
Or at least that, like, maybe they didn't know that we were orbiting the sun, but something was orbiting us, or whatever it was. Yeah. Another one of those, another one of those time travel conversations that you just wish that we could have. Yeah. So I wanted to mention Seahenge, because as we talk about, the thought of moving any of these monuments is just absolutely, it sounds like a horror movie to me. But Seahenge was a 4,000-year-old Bronze Age timber circle discovered in 1998 on the quiet and often forgotten North Norfolk home beach. It caused a huge amount of controversy, both locally and nationally, when English Heritage agreed to fund the Norfolk Archeological Unit to remove the timbers from the beach in 1999. Like, can you imagine saying, yeah, we're actually going to move like the Grange Stone Circle? Yeah.
Oh, I have a little bit of grace for this one because it's wood.
Exactly.
Because I'm like, we really are going to lose it. But even the stones, we are losing some, like we're losing carvings. Yeah. You know, it's such a hard question.
Yeah. And obviously, like, the people that are, they're not taking these decisions lightly. But yeah, like the fact, I mean, it's obviously very specific conditions that the wood survived for 4,000 years, you know, on this beach. But it was obviously the cause of much protest by the local druids at the time.
Yeah.
Good for them. Because right in the turn of the century, you're just like, you know, we're going into a new millennium and you're trying to get rid of this heritage. What the hell? Turned out to be a huge tree stump that was buried upside down with its roots pointing up. And have you seen any photos of this?
No, I have not, but I'm opening a tab
have
right
a little
now.
Google, because it's really cool looking. So there's like, for anybody who can't Google right now, the tree stump essentially, so it's upside down. So you imagine the roots of a tree. It almost looks like the palm of a hand.
I was going to say it's giving altar to me.
And then,
like, you could lay something on that for sure. Maybe even a person.
Yeah. And then
that's how
the
big
stone
it is.
circle is surrounding it. There are 55.
Wood
circle. Thank you. So it was buried upside down with the roots pointing up, and surrounding the tree stump were 55 timber posts, which had been cut from smaller oaks. Once again, like as Heather was talking about the hawthorn and ash, are sacred trees. We're way overdue a sacred tree episode, but an oak is another sacred tree to these people. So smaller oaks in the surrounding area were cut down to create these 55 posts. Dendrochronology, which is your tree ring analysis, determined the trees were felled in the spring of 2049 BCE. I love that they know the season.
Wow. Yeah, that's one of the good things about plant science in that way, is they can get so
crazy
specific.
Some say that the upturned tree stump was put there so dead bodies could be laid on top and birds and animals could then pick away at the flesh and bones. So it's like their version of sky burial, essentially. Oh, is it Viking sky burial?
That's funny. When I saw the picture, I've also heard it in like Nepal.
Oh, that's
and
what I'm
things
thinking
like
of.
that,
That's what I'm thinking of.
parts
Yeah.
of India. But when I looked at the pictures, I was like, it's about the size you could lay a person
Yeah.
on it. And I didn't even know that was coming, that is an idea of what they were using.
Yeah. We should bring
it
that
for.
back as a burial. I could do that. Like a lot of people, like you and my husband always jokes that he would like a sky burial. I'm like, yeah, just on a beach, on an upturned thing, surrounded by tree roots or surrounded by timber posts. That's metal as fuck. Yeah.
It is.
So then we arrive at Ringforts and Cashels. So Ringforts are the most common monuments surviving in Ireland with up to 60,000 examples, which also sort of shows you how underdeveloped the land is in Ireland that we have 60,000 ringforts just battering about.
Oh, but you won't find anyone who will go develop
Yes.
one of those.
Most were built during the early medieval period, so about 500 to 900 AD or Christian era. Though some are thought to date to late Iron Age, which is 100 to 500. However, many are found on or within earlier sites that have origins going back as far as the Bronze Age. So we have these sacred sites that we are reusing and recycling because we just know that there's something special about these places and magical. Which, as much as we're talking about that we try not to build anything or destroy any of the ringforts, just shows that our ancestors definitely did believe in redeveloping places, even if it was something that was special to their own ancestors that came before. But I give them a lot more grace for doing it. We shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
They can.
Yeah, it is interesting. So these are the ones that people say are fairy forts, and you'll notice them in the landscape. A lot of times it looks like a perfect ring of trees or a perfect ring of vegetation in a field that otherwise has cows or crops or something in it, because the superstition or the folk tale is to you do not take a single stone. We do not touch or move these. But yeah, it is interesting that archaeologists prove that they were dwelling places for people and animals in the past. So it's almost a form of like ancestor veneration to leave them alone.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, definitely. Like just showing that respect, and even if it's not for superstitious reasons or like for fear, that it's just like, well, no, this is special, and somebody's relatives or somebody's family line can be traced back here, or it's gone. They inhabited this place, and we're not going to mess with it because it's not ours to mess with.
Exactly. I have also wondered if part of it could be farmers that do leave them alone prosper more, because you're leaving a biodiverse area,
right,
in that you do not develop in your field. So you're giving home to native habitat, and maybe like the foxes and the kestrels that live there are helping keep the rodents under control, or you have more pollinators because you get the native flora and fauna in that one area that you leave alone. So I think it's possible there's like an ecological explanation as well for why people who leave them alone fare better.
Absolutely.
It's just become kind of worked into the lore over time.
Which is my favorite aspect of folklore, when there is something that when you look back, there is a scientific or a sociological explanation for the stories that we're telling each other, and there is a reason for them. It's just, I just love it so much. It gives me goosebumps. So these circular earth-banked enclosures were the standard farmsteads for free families and cattle farmers, providing security against cattle raiders and predators rather than acting solely as military forts. The word predator gave me pause, and then I remember that we used to have wolves, and I was like, all right, yeah, we actually did. It's not just these badgers, because that's the biggest carnivore we have in Ireland. It's not just, oh no, the badgers are out again. We did have wolves, so.
And badgers are mean.
My God.
Cute.
I
Very
would not
cute,
want to take,
but give them their space.
So many dogs that have been messed up by badgers. Good Lord. Because people actually lived in them, they show some exciting elements of life for the medieval Irish. Excavations at Rathgurran Ringfort in Galway shows evidence of contact with Rome, Scotland, France and Scandinavia, possibly including the trade of a valuable purple dye made there. I love that. I love that they had like this special, like when you think of like all the like whiskies and gins and all those regional things that we associate with place names in Ireland, that they had their own dye that was something that they exported and people like traveled and wanted to barter with them and trade with them. It's just like...
Yeah. These people were just so much more widely traveled than I think we give credit for, because the idea of walking or riding an animal as your only kind of transportation is so daunting to a modern person. But then you hear things about how far away they were getting goods, or like beads found at the Hill of Tara are amber from Russia. And like faience beads from Egypt. And I'm just like, who now? Maybe one person didn't walk that whole distance, but the good made its way that far.
Like they interacted with enough people for it to make it like a bridge of like people and trade the whole way from those places. Like,
and there's some amount of like, if you're trading, there's some amount of language or hand signals that you're using to get across from so far.
I love it so much. Similar early medieval circular enclosures exist across Europe, indicating a shared agricultural lifestyle. In each country, the original 5th to 12th century purpose as residential farmsteads was forgotten, replaced by legends that they were constructed by giants or magical people, often preserving them from modern farming, just as Heather was talking about.
That is so interesting. I didn't know that it was more widespread than Ireland.
I didn't know that until I was researching this, because I thought it was just this idea, Ireland, Scotland, UK sort of a thing.
Yeah. The idea that everyone forgot that people built them, and everyone thinks that they're magical. Because they're round?
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, what is the magical part of
But
this?
it's like, it gives me the similar vibe to, you know, as like, you know, do people find dinosaur bones and that's how we have dragon mythology? Is it that so many people in so many different places found these things like in their local area and came to similar conclusions? That it's like, oh, they must be magical. That must be a giant. It must be fairy people or whatever it is. Like that it's, just this shared human explanation for it, even if these people didn't really interact much, or maybe it was just like a game of telephone the whole way, that like these people in Ireland think that, and then they traded with people in France and they told the people in France, and then the people in France, you know, like the way it's spread.
Yeah, it just moves. Yeah, and it's really in Ireland because there's these mounds that people are buried in, these passage tombs that are meant to be where the fairies can come in and out of, and it's where they live. It's where they like retired to when humans started being in the land. And I almost wonder if because a ring fort can kind of look like a passage tomb, they all, maybe it's actually going Ireland to France that way of like, oh, fairies come out of some of those. So like mind yourself, because they just end up looking very similar as they get covered in vegetation and partially buried and whatnot.
Yeah, and like you have no way of knowing. Obviously, we're only finding out now with like modern archaeological practices how old some of these things are. So like to anybody, it's, you know, like wrapping your head around the difference in time between these things that were built. Like you would just lump them all in together and you just think that they're all these same like magical things. And just as well, just to point out that the Irish word she, the word for fairy, just means like people under the mound or mound people. So like that is where this whole folklore comes from. Which is just, it's just magical. And it's why these places are so magical and they're so respected and venerated, you know? So I did, of course, want to dive into the National Folklore Collection and see if we have some folklore, just because the folklore collection, because it's told by children, it's just so beautifully innocent, and like there's half a story missing, there's something that doesn't quite make sense, the sentences trail off halfway, like it's just such a delight to go through.
I feel like this is our like take a shot when we mention this episode is the National Folklore Collection.
100%. So just a couple of stories that I picked out of the school's National Folklore Collection. We have tales of fields housing fairy forts where it was believed that if you went into them, you would never get out again. We have a story of a man named Kinsella who was walking by a fort when he, quote, saw a light which led him astray. We have another man who had cows on a field and there was a fairy fort on the field. Every evening, the people could not get any milk from the cows. So he watched with a gun to find out the reason. A little rabbit came and drank all the milk. After shooting the rabbit, he followed it into a fairy fort, only to find a, quote, fairy woman, and she was in gores of blood in the bed and had changed herself into a little rabbit. So I don't know how he knew that it was a woman when it was a rabbit on the bed, but like such is the nature of these.
I think the wound is in the same place is how he's meant to know, because that's a really common story. I've heard it in Limerick,
really
slightly different spin, and I've heard it in Connemara when I lived there this last summer as well. This idea of witches turning into hares or rabbits.
Yeah, because that was Emily did our rabbits and hares episode, and we had a whole thing about like that it was older women as well in communities who could turn into rabbits or hares. So it would be like somebody's grandmother. Somebody would have a rabbit or hare and they would refer to it as their grandmother, which is just absolutely delightful.
Really sweet.
The superstition runs so strong that Seahenge wasn't the only sacred monument that caused protests in 1999. Plans for the M18 motorway in County Clare were altered to avoid destroying a fairy tree, which was a hawthorn bush, at Latoon, following a public campaign led by the folklorist Eddie Lenihan. The tree, considered a sacred meeting point for spirits, was fenced off and left intact in between motorway lanes. It's just such a delightfully Irish story.
It is. It's such a good one. I think there's also meant to be somewhere else in the country where they cut through a bit of a ring fort. So then it's not a perfect circle anymore. It's damaged by the motorway, and there's meant to be a lot of traffic accidents there.
Yes.
Now.
And there was the other one. I cannot remember which billionaire it was. I keep wanting to say no, because he still has all his money. I was going to say it was the Ryanair guy, but there was one of the billionaires who did not respect the ring fort on something that he was developing, and apparently he lost all his money right after.
I've heard this one too. I think it's a supermarket chain owner.
Yes, that's what it was.
Is the way I heard it told.
If anyone's binging our episodes, they're like screaming it at me because I said it in our fairy episode. But yeah, sorry, go ahead. He wanted to
build, as I understand it, his mansion, and he moved a ring fort on his property to do it. He didn't destroy it. He just moved it somewhere else and ended up losing everything.
Which, wow. Don't feel bad. As we have seen, each type of monument reflects different periods, materials, and purposes, yet all of them became tied to ideas of ritual, identity, and the supernatural. Ring forts were originally built with timber structures inside their earthen banks. Wooden houses and fences do not survive well in the Irish climate, so what remains today is the circular outline, usually overgrown. These features became fixed parts of the landscape, influencing place names and acting as markers of local identity. Because they were so embedded in everyday geography, they naturally became linked with local customs and folklore. Stone circles, by contrast, are among the most stable features in the landscape. They were built from durable, locally sourced rocks such as sarsen, granite, limestone, sandstone and slate. Most builders used what was available nearby, although some sites, as we've covered, including Stonehenge, contain stones transported from considerable distances.
And Newgrange, as we said, those mountains are...
That's crazy.
Quite a hike.
Yeah. I wouldn't walk it.
Much less with a huge stone.
Yeah, Jesus. A number of stone circles and megalithic sites, including Carrowkeel, excavations recorded the presence of white quartz. It appeared as both internal fragments and as larger external pieces, although much of it has since been removed by modern treasure hunters, which is bold, slap in the wrist for that. Its deliberate placement suggests a symbolic or ritual significance. Ireland has an abundant supply of quartz and quartzite, and I just wanted to make a distinction because quartzite, in the modern day, we normally talk about it in relation to like kitchen countertops, and quartzite is like a man-made thing, but that is not what we're referring to here. Quartzite in this context is a naturally occurring substance, just to get that out of the way, in case people's going like, how did they have quartzite back then? Anyway.
That's in my kitchen.
So it has an abundant supply of quartz and quartzite, especially in Connemara and Donegal. These stones appear in early ecclesiastical records, archaeological excavations, folklore collections, and modern ethnographic accounts. And I wanted to ask Heather if you're a crystal practitioner and what's your understanding of white quartz?
Who among us doesn't like a shiny rock?
Indeed.
So yeah, I would say not an expert, but I dabble. And obviously clear quartz is, in sort of modern understanding of witchcraft, used to amplify the energies of other stones, or as a like clearing or cleansing property, at least as I understand it. But yeah, a lot of really interesting stuff going on with quartz and quartzite at these sites, as I know you're going to get into.
Yes. So the use of white quartz is consistent and rarely accidental. Quartz has a physical property known as triboluminescence. When two pieces are rubbed together in darkness, they emit a bright yellow-orange light. This may help explain why quartz became associated with fairies, the dead, and otherworldly forces. Just as the fairy folk were called Dina Ushla, meaning noble or gentle people, white quartz was known as Cloch Ushna, noble stone. So we have a Donegal tradition describing how people, even like in more modern times, would have used white quartz. The quote is, "It said there were never white quartz stones anywhere but a place where the hill folk had a dwelling. They are fairy stones by right, and it is not good to have anything to do with them. People have always been forbidden to use them in the stonework when building a house or byre. Any building in which they were used would be unlucky. In the old days, when people were being evicted, it was a custom that the evicted family would make every effort to get back into the house at night and light a fire of quartz stones in the hearth before the new occupants came in. They were convinced that if they succeeded in doing so, the new people would never have a day of prosperity or peace." I love the pettiness.
Oh, I was going to say, what a way to cope,
Yeah.
though. Kind of like sicking the fairies on whoever gets the house
Definitely.
next.
Like, I don't want you to enjoy the house that I essentially, so this could be a house that they built and it's been taken off them. Yeah, so like, yeah, sicking the fairies on them and just saying, like, yeah, do you know what? If we can't enjoy this house, neither can you. Cursing rituals involving quartz were recorded in several regions, and using 9 white stones in a fire. Misusing quartz in this way was believed to provoke the anger of the good people. Yet quartz could also be used for healing. The fairy doctors were said to use stones and crystals for curative purposes. At Newgrange, the role of quartz has been debated. Robert Hensey argues that the famous white quartz facade was not part of the original Neolithic construction, but was added after 2500 BCE. If people walked or stood on a quartz platform that produced triboluminescence, the effect may have been interpreted as a powerful communal invocation directed towards ancestors or deities. I just think that is so cool, like walking on the quartz, like in low light, and you see like little like lights and sparks coming off your feet. I want to do that. I just want to see it in person.
Yeah. Yeah, so for people who haven't seen the outside of Newgrange, it's like very visible in the landscape because they found a lot of white quartz around it, and one archaeologist's interpretation of what to do with it was it must have been up on the walls around the outside. So it really pops now, and it's very white and bright. But people have since pushed back and said, well, what if they were meant to be on the ground around the outside? The idea being when you walked on it, they would spark a little bit. Or even that it would reflect the moonlight inside for ritual use so that you could see perhaps inside without candles. It's around a lot of these kind of passage tombs as well. I saw it in Sligo at the kind of like pre-Newgrange 3 monuments up there. Also have a lot of white quartz. And then I know there's an experiential archaeologist in Wales whose name escapes me. His theory is that they would go inside these hills and like kind of whack the quartz together in meditation.
Oh, wow.
And like kind of be sitting there making these sparks all night until the sun comes in and does the alignment thing, which definitely holds some... it's very visceral. I can feel that.
It's
the
like
idea
you're
of like
summoning
almost
it.
They're striking... Yeah, or like you're trying to restart the fire of the sun almost. Like you're sparking and you're sparking and you're sparking all night and then eventually it does it. Perhaps as like a trance kind of activity. So in his view, there's white quartz around the outside of these passage tombs because people were using it there.
Right.
I
So it's almost like
guess.
they were littering. It's like we use it and we
Right,
leave it
they're
there.
just like, oh,
because it's our sacred
right.
site.
I banged these rocks together all night. I'm sick of them.
Yeah.
Like, I'm leaving them and I'm going to have some breakfast.
It's like their version of like the, you know, the empty beer cans or like after a concert, like or the empty
Yeah.
plastic cups. But no, like essentially because it was so sacred, maybe they just left them there because they were like, this is where the quartz lives, and like we're banging them together. We
Right.
do not take anything away from this
Yeah.
site. Yeah. I
And then over time, it just becomes people associate it with the fairies because the fairies are associated with these passage tombs and coming in and out of them. So then you could use it to curse people or to draw the ire of the good
amazing.
people.
Yeah,
Potentially.
I love it. I just love it so much.
One other thing you can look for if you too enjoy creeping around old church ruins, like myself, there's often a piece of white quartz or quartzite in the back, like the altar wall of old churches. Though there's a really pronounced one in Glendalough. So like churches of that kind of age around Ireland specifically. And it's another one of those, we don't know the motivation of like, is it them trying to associate themselves with the fairies and try to ingratiate themselves that way into the lore that's already there? Or is it a middle finger to the good people and they're like, oh, we don't care. Like, we'll build it in our house even though it's unlucky.
Yeah.
No one really knows why, but it is kind of an early Christian tradition in Ireland to build a big chunk of white quartz into your altar wall. So something to look for if you're out peeking around for Sheila Nagees and old gravestones and stuff. Watch out for the white quartz in the back wall as well.
My instincts tells me that because of the Irish relationship with our folk customs, but also Christianity and Catholicism, you know, the way we have retained so many of our superstitions, I would guess it's just people covering their arse and going like, we have a church, but we want to make sure that the fairies are invoked too. They're like, we want them to make sure that they know we haven't completely forgotten them, you know.
Right. Yeah, for sure. That's definitely one of the possibilities.
And finally, we could not discuss megaliths, fairy forts, stone circles, and the mysteries that surround them without touching on one of the most persistent ideas in Earth mystery lore, ley lines. These are theoretical, invisible alignments said to link significant landmarks across the world. So people might remember Megan actually brought it up in the astrology episode. And you don't need to tell me twice to research something metaphysical, because of course I will. Personally, my first experience of hearing about ley lines was the Age of Misrule series by Mark Chadbourne. It's set in like late 90s, early 2000s England, where Celtic magic returns to Earth, and they use ley lines to travel between time periods, but also between like sacred sites. So like they activate the ley lines at Stonehenge, and they could end up like at in Scotland at a stone circle there, and it's like their method of travel. It was just such a cool way, and they can actually see them if they take like psychedelic drugs. They can see the ley lines in the ground. That was like the part of the book. Such a good book series. I need to reread it. I haven't read it since like in my 20s. Yeah.
Honestly, it sounds very good, and like a period piece at this time as well with the Y2K.
Yes, absolutely. And what about you? What's your ideas? Because I know when I first posited this episode to you, you're like, I need to like look into ley lines more. So yeah, completely understand. Well, like, what is your understanding of ley lines?
So I hadn't come across them in any media. It's like kind of a blind spot for me, I guess, but I have heard about them being at the Hill of Ishnok, which is really central in Ireland for Bealtaine on the tours that the amazing guide was giving. He was talking about the fact that because it's really central, any ley lines that you try to draw in Ireland, you're going to go through Ishnok, basically. It's kind of like the heart of the island, so to speak, and where the Bealtaine fires go up. So I actually reached out to him because we're connected
nice.
on Instagram. Shout out to Dree Ishni.
Nice. Hello, shout out.
Being like, what was that about the what was that? Run me back over the ley lines. So I have a little bit of at least the supposed ones in Ireland to share.
Because they were, it started out, like I'll get into it. It was more of an English folklore and English belief, and of course, because we're so close to them, people wanted to extend the ley lines out across the islands. So the idea of ley lines was introduced in the early 20th century by Alfred Watkins, who was an English amateur archaeologist and photographer. He noticed that ancient mounds, moats, beacons and mark stones often seemed to fall into straight lines across the British landscape. Watkins wondered whether this pattern was deliberate, accidental, or simply a misunderstanding. Over time, the concept grew far beyond his original observations. Some New Age thinkers believe that ley lines carry sacred energies, especially where they intersect. They often point to sites such as Stonehenge, the pyramids of Giza, Machu Picchu and Uluru in Australia as examples of places connected by these alignments. And yes, there is a ley line map of Ireland drawing connections between our ancient sites. The fascination with alignments is understandable when you look at places like Carnac in Brittany. The Carnac alignments, those were the straight parallel ones that we were talking about earlier, contain more than 3,000 standing stones between 2 and 13 feet high, arranged in over 30 rows that stretch for more than 4 miles. They date to around 4500 BCE and form the largest collection of megaliths in the world. I can see Heather mentally adding this to her travel itinerary. She's like, how
Is it that
how can I get to
obvious?
France? Where's the next flight?
I'm going to swim the channel.
The rows are not perfectly straight. They follow a natural ridge that separates the coastal plain from the inland world, which suggests they may have marked a symbolic boundary between the land and sea. Or did they follow a ley line? I mean, I love that. So what did you have a ley line that you wanted to speak about?
Yeah. So the one that I heard about from the Hill of Ishnok, which because it's really central and really high up, you can see many directions from it. And there's actually 2 ley lines that I think are really interesting that are meant to intersect it. And you can, I guess it helps me when it's visual, like you can see the different mountains and that it's supposed to intersect with. So along the line of the rising sun on the winter solstice and the setting sun on the summer solstice, they call it the Brigid line, and it intersects Crohan Hill, which is an extinct volcano that is meant to be Brigid's forge and where she kept her sacred flame.
Oh, wow.
And then it goes, it's not exactly on it, but it's like 100 meters from the fire temple where the Saint Brigid kept her fire in Kildare, and then ends in Glastonbury Tor in England, which is another Brigid associated, goddess Saint Brigid associated site, which is really interesting. And then there's a different one, like the exact opposite one. So the rising sun of the summer solstice and the setting sun on the winter solstice line all has to do with monuments associated with the Cailleach, like the old woman of winter.
Wow.
So things like Slieve na Cailleach, Slieve Gullion, where her tomb is, are like all in this particular line. And I think it's really interesting because they are thought, these two, to does Brigid become the Cailleach in the winter? In Scottish lore, they're like fighting each other. They're kind of the forces of summer and winter, and then the shoulder seasons are when they're fighting for domination. So the idea that monuments associated with these particular figures are in a like observable straight line from this one hill is really compelling and interesting to me.
I love that.
I don't know if it's something in the sky that they're tracing, or, you know, we'll never know, but it is interesting.
There is that pattern to it. And then, I mean, that is what's so compelling about ley lines. And I think whether people believe in it or not, and we'll get into slightly, you know, the naysayers. I think we as humans, obviously, we do love patterns, and we do love to see a grand design to everything. So, I mean, like, let people believe things. Let people like things, you know? If we can see a connection between these sites and we can see that pattern in the landscape, you know, I'm all for it. So a study of the Hill of Tara in 2004 used map dowsing based on the belief that Earth energies are part of a universal energy field. Practitioners claim they can sense the quality of these energies through colour associations, similar to the way some healers describe reading human auras. So dowsing, just as a side note, Dowsing itself is much older. It emerged in the European Middle Ages as a method for detecting hidden water, minerals, treasure, or even archaeological remains. The dowser holds a forked rod or a pendulum, which is said to respond through involuntary muscular movements. Some people might have heard the term divining rod, but practitioners don't really like that term because they don't consider the practice to be divination. Because I don't want any angry messages. Are any of these ideas real? The archaeologist Aubrey Burrell, a well-known critic of ley line theories, once said that the subject contains, quote, vestiges of truth surrounded by a great deal of nonsense. To be fair, it's a convenient connection of ancient structures and human pattern seeking, as I was saying.
Yeah, I've seen people do things like make ley lines of all the Woolworths locations, like the store. Like you can draw connections between anything.
Yeah. It's very much like Jesus in the bird toast sort of thing, that like if you want to see it, you'll see it. Yeah. Honestly, the appeal of ley lines for me lies less in their scientific validity and more in the human connection aspect. In the early 20th century, after Watkins published his book, people took to the countryside with compasses and maps, trying to find the, quote, old paths and align the landscape with its past. They packed picnics, wandered through fields, and spent long summer days exploring. So, whether or not these ley lines exist, the human experience certainly did. And there's something undeniably magical about that. Yes, and that's right stand
as an ending note, and that's definitely been my experience in looking for any of these old monuments, whether it's a ring fort or a passage tomb. Some of them are quite buried or off the beaten track, and it is just a way to be outside and connect and use your senses. And
yeah, and it was the same like when Emily and I were discussing like beating the bounds. Like even if you don't believe that like, you know, the boundary of your house has like a magical property, at least if you walk around and appreciate like that your home is protecting you and that makes you feel safe and that it's somewhere that you can have as a sanctuary, which I hope everybody has. I mean, what's the harm? It's magical in and of itself, you know?
For sure. I love that one. It's making the chores a bit more magical as well.
Exactly.
I need that. I need that motivation for sure.
We all need that. Thank you so much for joining me, Heather. This has been absolutely lovely, and you've brought so much great insight. I mean, like it's probably going to be a very long episode. It's going to be very hard to cut anything at all out. But
look, if we need to split it in two.
Indeed, if we need it. So yeah, before we sign off, where can people find you, or what would you like people to associate with you? What are you up to?
Clearly going to France. No, I'm at Heather.Wildflower on Instagram and TikTok, and you'll find me on there talking about all these kinds of things and taking you there along with me when I can.
Yes.
So would love
and if
to
you're
connect
American,
on
she
there.
can't get you an Irish visa. I know all of you are asking her. She can't get you. You all want to move here. She can't adopt you, right? Unfortunately.
I appreciate the sentiment.
So yeah, thank you for joining us in our Monuments and Ley Lines episode. My name is Neve.
And I'm Heather.
And fuck yeah, folklore. Goodbye.
Bye.
American homeowners are sitting on $30 trillion in home equity. But home insurance is up over 100% since 2010. Healthcare, childcare, property taxes, all up. But wages? Just stuck. Lots of equity, but feeling the squeeze. Every month they wonder why it still feels so tight. Unlock thinks we need to talk about this more. Start at unlock.com/equity. Unlock Home Equity Solutions and MLS 2657081.
Quick question. When was the last time a display ad changed your mind? Now think about the last time a friend told you about something they loved. Different feeling, right? That's how podcast advertising works. A host who's built real trust with their audience talks about your brand in their own words, in their own voice. It doesn't interrupt the experience. It's part of it. With Acast, you can access the world's largest podcast marketplace. Choose the right shows, the right audiences, the right format. Then watch the data tell you it worked. You're not buying impressions. You're buying influence. Learn more by visiting acast.com/advertise.